There is a kind of loneliness that doesn't hurt like abandonment. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg, it simply stays. You might know this silence very well. You wake up, go through your routine, handle your responsibilities, but at some point during the day, you realize something unusual. You don't actually miss anyone specific. There are no messages waiting, no invitations, no urgent need to be seen, heard, or included. And that realization brings a dangerous question, one that usually appears late at night, when everything becomes quiet. Is there something wrong with me? From a very young age, we are taught that happiness means being surrounded by people, that having many friends is proof of emotional success, that walking alone is a sign of failure, sadness, or weakness. And so even when you feel calm in your own company, doubt starts to grow inside you, not because you feel empty, but because you were told you should. But what if this loneliness isn't a flaw? What if it's a sign? Picture someone walking down a road covered in fog. Around them, there are voices, laughter, constant noise, groups of people walking together, talking non-stop, yet never really listening to each other. Some wear masks so well that they no longer remember who they are without them. And then there is that one person, maybe you, who slows down, observes, and notices something uncomfortable. Not all company is presence, and not all silence is emptiness. Some minds simply don't fit into shallow social spaces, not because they are cold, not because they feel superior, but because they perceive too much. They feel too deeply. They think beyond the surface. For these people, certain interactions don't nourish, they drain. Certain conversations don't connect, they exhaust. And slowly, without dramatic decisions or conflict, they step back, not to reject the world, but to protect something very personal, their inner peace. The problem is, no one ever explains this to you. Instead, you grow up hearing that you need to try harder, be more social, lower your standards, as if forcing yourself to tolerate what empties you is maturity, as if betraying your own nature is normal. And little by little, you begin to blame yourself for something that may never have been a problem to begin with. The truth, rarely spoken, is that some people are not built for shallow connections. They need depth the way others need air. They crave meaning, truth, authentic presence, and when that doesn't exist around them, they choose honest solitude over noisy companionship. If you've gone long periods with few or no friends, if you've ever felt out of place in social environments without knowing why, if you've realized you'd rather be alone than pretend to belong where there is no real connection, then this video is not an accident, because what you're about to discover is not just a list of personality traits. It's a mirror, a map, an explanation that can completely change how you see yourself and how you understand your solitude. But before revealing the first rare trait, there is something even more important you need to understand, something almost no one ever told you about how your mind actually works, and why, deep down, you've always felt that you were not meant to live the way most people do. At some point in life, you probably tried to do what everyone said was normal. You showed up, you sat at the table, you joined the conversations, and yet, something always felt off. It wasn't that people were cruel. It wasn't that you were rejected outright. In fact, most of the time, you were welcomed. Smiles, small talk, casual laughter. From the outside, everything looked fine, but inside, a quiet discomfort kept growing. A sense that you were present, but not truly connected. Have you ever left a social gathering feeling more tired than when you arrived? Not physically tired, emotionally drained, as if something had been taken from you instead of given. You replay conversations in your head, noticing the pauses, the forced laughs, the empty phrases. You realize that many people talk, but very few actually communicate. And slowly, without making a conscious decision, you begin to withdraw. This is where confusion starts, because society doesn't teach us to question the quality of connection, only the quantity. It praises busy social lives, full calendars, constant interaction. And when you don't crave that, when you don't feel fulfilled by it, the blame quietly turns inward. Why don't I enjoy this like everyone else? Why do these interactions feel so shallow? Why do I feel more alive when I'm alone than when I'm surrounded by people? Most people never ask these questions. They move from one distraction to the next, from one conversation to another, never stopping long enough to feel the emptiness underneath. But you did stop. And once you did, you couldn't unsee it. You began to notice patterns. How often people wear social masks. How easily conversations turn into gossip. How rare it is for someone to speak honestly about fear, purpose, or meaning. And your mind, naturally observant, naturally reflective, started rejecting what didn't feel real. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly pulling away. This is where many people misunderstand you. They assume you're antisocial, cold, arrogant, disconnected. But the truth is almost the opposite. You don't avoid people. You avoid emptiness. You don't reject connection. You reject performance. For someone like you, shallow interaction feels heavier than solitude. Pretending interest feels more exhausting than silence. And being around people while feeling unseen feels lonelier than being physically alone. So you protect yourself. You stop forcing friendships that don't nourish you. You stop explaining why you don't enjoy certain spaces. You stop chasing connection where depth doesn't exist. And yes, this often leaves you alone. But what no one tells you is that this aloneness didn't come from failure. It came from awareness. From the moment you realize that not every open door leads somewhere worth going. The real problem is that you were never given language for this experience. No one told you that some minds are wired to seek meaning before belonging, that some hearts cannot bond without depth, that some people need fewer connections because they feel everything more intensely. And without that understanding, solitude starts to feel like something to fix instead of something to understand. But here's the turning point. Because once you understand why your mind rejects superficial bonds, everything changes. Your past makes sense. Your choices stop feeling random, and what once felt like isolation begins to reveal itself as a form of inner intelligence. And in the next chapter, we're going to uncover the first rare trait behind this pattern, a trait that explains why fake energy, forced smiles, and surface-level relationships have always felt unbearable to you. Here is the first truth most people never hear, and the one that changes everything once you understand it. Your solitude is not caused by rejection, it is caused by intolerance for what feels false. Some minds are simply not built to survive in environments full of masks. From a psychological perspective, there are individuals whose self-awareness develops earlier and deeper than average. These people don't just listen to words, they sense intentions. They don't just observe behavior, they feel emotional inconsistencies. Their brain constantly scans for alignment between what is said and what is felt. And when those two don't match, something inside them shuts down. You may have noticed this your entire life. A forced smile makes you uncomfortable. A polite conversation feels heavy. A group interaction drains you faster than silence ever could, not because you're judgmental, but because your nervous system reacts to inauthenticity the same way a body reacts to noise it can't escape. Psychology explains this as heightened perceptual awareness. Your brain doesn't filter social signals the way most people do. While others can ignore contradictions, fake enthusiasm, or subtle manipulation, you register everything. Tone changes, micro-expressions, emotional gaps, unspoken tension, and processing all of that takes energy. This is why shallow environments exhaust you. Small talk isn't neutral for you, it's labor. Social performance isn't harmless, it's draining. When people talk just to fill silence, when conversations lack meaning, your mind feels like it's wasting something precious. And slowly, your system learns a pattern. Distance equals relief. This is also why you've likely had a very low tolerance for fake people your entire life. You don't enjoy gossip. You sense manipulation before it's obvious. You feel uneasy around people who change personalities depending on who's watching. And because of that, you naturally retreat. Not as a punishment, not as self-sabotage, but as self-preservation. Most social circles are built on convenience, habit, and shared distraction, not truth. People bond over complaints, appearances, routines. Very few bond over honesty. And your mind knows the difference immediately. So instead of lowering your standards, you raise your walls. You choose silence over pretending, depth over popularity, peace over approval. And to the outside world, this looks like isolation. But internally, something very different is happening. You're not running away from people. You're moving toward coherence. The mistake society makes is assuming that everyone needs the same type of connection. But psychology shows that some individuals are wired for depth-first bonding, not frequency-based bonding. One real connection nourishes you more than 10 shallow ones ever could. This is why you'd rather be alone than sit through conversations that feel empty. Why you'd rather observe than perform. Why you feel more like yourself in solitude than in crowds. And here's the most important part of this revelation. Your brain associates authenticity with safety. Once you've tasted real connection, even once, everything else feels like noise. And when authenticity isn't present, your system chooses withdrawal, not because you're broken, but because you're calibrated differently. This is the first rare trait. But it doesn't stop here, because this intolerance for the false doesn't exist alone. It connects to something even deeper, something that explains why social interaction costs you so much energy, and why recovery in solitude isn't optional for you. It's necessary. And once you understand that mechanism, you'll realize why your need to be alone was never a weakness. It was a biological and psychological signal your body has been sending you all along. There was a moment, maybe more than one, when you realized something had changed inside you. It wasn't dramatic. There was no argument, no big goodbye, just a quiet decision you didn't even name at the time. Maybe it happened at a table surrounded by people where everyone was laughing, and you felt strangely absent. You listened, nodded, smiled at the right moments, but inside, you felt like a visitor in a conversation that never truly arrived anywhere. Or maybe it happened after a long day, when your phone stayed silent, and instead of feeling anxious, you felt relieved. That's the part most people don't understand. They assume loneliness always hurts, but for you, forcing connection hurt more. There was a time when you tried harder. You accepted invitations you didn't want. You stayed longer than you should have. You laughed when something wasn't funny. You shared pieces of yourself that weren't truly seen or received. And every time you did that, you paid a price. You went home feeling empty, overstimulated, disconnected from yourself. Slowly, your body began to associate social effort with emotional fatigue. And your mind, always watching, learned a lesson it never forgot. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. So you began to pull back. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped chasing inclusion. You stopped trying to be understood by people who weren't listening in the first place. And in that withdrawal, something unexpected happened. You started to feel clearer. Your thoughts became quieter. Your intuition stronger. Your sense of self more stable. Alone, you could breathe. Alone, you didn't have to perform. Alone, you didn't have to translate your depth into something palatable. But of course, doubt followed. Late at night, questions would surface. Am I becoming too distant? Is this healthy? Will I end up completely alone? And because no one ever validated this experience, you carried that doubt silently. You watched others move in groups, build circles, collect friendships. And part of you wondered if you were missing something essential. What you didn't see was the cost they were paying, the exhaustion behind constant availability, the compromises they made to belong, the pieces of themselves they left behind to stay connected. You weren't willing to pay that price, and that doesn't make you broken. It makes you honest. Many people lose themselves slowly in social noise. You did the opposite. You found yourself in the quiet. And that choice, whether conscious or not, shaped everything that followed. This chapter of your life wasn't about rejection. It was about boundaries forming naturally, about your nervous system protecting you, about your mind choosing integrity over approval. If this story feels familiar, if you recognize yourself in these moments of silent withdrawal, I want you to pause for a second. You're not alone in this experience, even if it feels that way. If you feel comfortable, share in the comments a moment when you realized you no longer wanted to force connections that didn't feel real. Someone reading might finally feel understood because of your words. But there's still a deeper layer to this story. Because your withdrawal wasn't just emotional, it wasn't just personal history. There is a biological reason why social interaction costs you more energy than it seems to cost others, and why solitude doesn't weaken you, but restores you. And once you understand that mechanism, everything about your need for space will finally make sense. Here is the second revelation, and for many people, this is the moment everything finally clicks. You don't get tired of people because you dislike them. You get tired because your system processes more than most people realize. Psychology describes this as high social sensitivity. Some nervous systems are simply more responsive. They absorb emotional signals, shifts in tone, unspoken tension, and subtle cues that others barely register. While most people engage socially on one level, you engage on several at once. You listen to words. You feel emotions behind those words. You sense inconsistencies. You track dynamics in the room. All of that happens automatically, without effort, and all of it consumes energy. For an extroverted nervous system, social interaction creates stimulation and reward. But for a sensitive, depth-oriented system, every interaction is a form of expenditure. You don't just talk, you process. You don't just react, you analyze. That's why socializing leaves you needing silence afterward. Not entertainment, not distraction. Silence. Solitude is not avoidance for you, it's recovery. And when you don't get that recovery, something feels off. Your thoughts become noisy, your patience shortens, your intuition dulls. Over time, your body learns to associate constant social exposure with imbalance, so it pulls you back. This is not a flaw, it's regulation. But here's where many people suffer unnecessarily. They fight this mechanism instead of working with it. They force themselves into social rhythms that don't match their biology. They label their need for space as weakness. And in doing so, they disconnect from their own nervous system. So here is the practical technique that changes everything. It's simple, but powerful. Stop measuring your social health by how often you interact. Start measuring it by how you feel afterward. Before saying yes to any social situation, ask yourself one question. Will this cost me more energy than I can restore? If the answer is yes, you don't owe anyone an explanation. If you leave a conversation feeling clearer, calmer, or inspired, that's nourishment. If you leave feeling foggy, irritated, or empty, that's a signal. And your body has been sending you those signals for years. The practice is not isolation. The practice is selective engagement, fewer interactions, higher quality, longer recovery time. This is how your system stays balanced. When you honor this rhythm, something shifts. You stop resenting people, you stop feeling broken, you stop fighting your own nature, and slowly your solitude becomes intentional, not accidental. But there's still another layer beneath this. Because sensitivity alone doesn't explain everything. There is a reason you don't seek validation the way others do, a reason you don't feel empty without constant approval, a reason you can stand alone without collapsing inward. And that reason points to a trait even rarer than sensitivity, one that defines how you build your inner world and why your standards for connection are so high. There is a point where solitude stops being something you endure and becomes something that shapes you. Most people never reach that point. They stay surrounded by noise, opinions, validation, constant feedback. Their sense of self is built from reflections in other people's eyes, and without realizing it, they become dependent on being seen to feel real. But you learned something different. When the world grew quiet around you, you didn't disappear. You went inward. And in that inward space, something rare began to form. You discovered that your sense of worth didn't collapse without attention, that your identity didn't dissolve without applause, that your mind could generate meaning without external confirmation. Psychology calls this low social dependency. But lived from the inside, it feels like something much deeper. It feels like standing on your own ground. You learn to sit with your thoughts instead of escaping them, to entertain yourself without distraction, to solve problems internally before seeking outside answers. And while others were constantly checking who approved of them, you were building an inner structure that didn't require permission. This is why your standards became higher. You don't invite people into your life easily because your inner world is not empty. It's full of reflection, full of awareness, full of emotional nuance. And when someone enters that space, they must add something real, not just noise. This is also why you've been misunderstood. Independence often looks like distance to those who rely on closeness to feel secure. Calm looks like coldness to those addicted to stimulation. Silence looks like arrogance to those who fear being alone with themselves. But what they don't see is the discipline behind your stillness, the strength it took to not numb yourself, the courage it took to face your inner landscape, the patience it took to grow without an audience. And here's the deepest part of this revelation. Your solitude didn't weaken you, it trained you, it sharpened your intuition, it refined your perception, it taught you discernment. You learned when to open, when to close, when to observe instead of engage. This is why you no longer trust easily, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Because somewhere in your past, trust was broken, boundaries were crossed, or care was missing when it mattered most. And instead of becoming bitter, your mind adapted. Psychology calls this a higher trust threshold. You observe longer, you listen more, you test quietly, not because you expect betrayal, but because you respect your own depth too much to hand it to someone unprepared. This combination, independence, sensitivity, discernment, is rare, and when it exists, it often creates periods of walking alone, not permanently, but purposefully. Because people like you don't find connection by searching loudly, they find it by staying aligned. And when connection does come, it isn't frequent, but it is profound. But here's the final truth most people never reach. This path you've been walking alone was never meant to isolate you forever. It was meant to prepare you. And in the final chapter, you'll understand what this preparation is for, how your solitude transforms into purpose, and why the people who walk alone the longest often carry the clearest light when they finally step forward. If you've stayed until now, there's something important you need to hear. Your solitude was never a mistake. It was never punishment. And it was never a sign that something was missing inside you. It was a phase of formation. While others were learning how to fit in, you were learning how to stand. While others depended on noise to feel alive, you learned how to listen. While others built identity through approval, you built it through awareness. And that changes everything. Because the goal of this journey was never to turn you into someone isolated forever. It was to help you become someone whole before connecting, someone who knows their limits, someone who values depth, someone who doesn't confuse attention with love or proximity with truth. People like you don't bond quickly, and that's intentional. You don't open easily, and that's wisdom. You don't chase crowds, because you already found your center. And when you finally meet those few who resonate with your depth, you won't need to shrink yourself to belong. You won't need to perform. You won't need to explain why you are the way you are. Connection will feel calm, mutual, real. Until then, your path isn't lacking meaning. Your solitude is where your intuition matured, your discernment sharpened, your inner voice became clear. This world doesn't need more noise. It needs people who can sit in silence and still remain awake. People who think deeply, people who feel honestly, people who walk alone long enough to know exactly who they are. If this video resonated with you, if you saw yourself in these words, know this: you're not broken, you're becoming. And you don't have to walk this path without recognition. Here's my invitation to you. Leave a comment sharing your name and the city you're watching from. In the next video, I'll personally read and highlight members of this community, because no one who walks consciously should feel unseen. If this content helped you understand yourself in a way no one ever explained before, like the video, it helps this message reach people who are silently searching for the same answers. And subscribe to the channel if you want more videos that explore the mind, awareness, and the deeper layers of human experience. The kind of knowledge school never taught, but life keeps asking us to understand. Remember this: some people are meant to walk alone for a while, not because they are lost, but because they are learning how to carry light. And in the next video, we're going even deeper into a part of yourself you may have felt but never had words for.